Hi, welcome to Up and About with Peekskill United. News, commentary, business, everything Peekskill. We have a great show for you tonight. Our first segment, we have a sit-down interview with Maureen McArdle Schulman, who's a candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives in the 17th Congressional District. Our second segment, of course, Inside City Hall. We'll talk about what's going on down there. Hi, I'm Bob Sullivan.
Hi, I'm Louis Segarra.
Hi, I'm Maureen McArdle Schulman.
Hi, I'm Joe Torres.
Hi, I'm Bruce Bellum.
As indicated, we're honored to have Maureen McArdle Schulman here, candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives in the 17th Congressional District, is running for the seat that's being vacated by the retiring Nina Lowy. Maureen, welcome. Thanks for stopping in to see us tonight. And just going through a little bit, your resume, you're a graduate of SUNY Farmingdale and Oswego. You have a degree in criminal justice, I believe, correct? Yes.
Yes.
And you've been married since 1981 to your husband, William.
Yep,
Mother
absolutely.
Still around? He's still there? I won't tell what year you got married. Mother of two children, grandmother of three. And most interesting in your resume, in 1982, you were one of the first women to become a New York City firefighter back in 1982. So after a career, children, grandchildren, you were a business owner, I understand, for a period of time. You volunteer in the community, the homeless pantries and the food pantries. The first question I got to ask you is, why do you want to go down to Washington and be a member of Congress? What gave you the motivation to run for Congress?
I'm pretty tired of what's going on in this country. It's frightening. And as I was making my phone calls before the primary, there's a lot of people who are very scared of what's going on in this country. And I couldn't sit back and complain anymore. I had to do something. I had to step up, and I chose this to step up to.
Yeah. And this is your first run for political office. You haven't been a town councilman or anything like that?
Nope.
Nothing. Yeah.
Straight to the top.
Oh, for the gusto.
You hopped right in. Now, one of the things that stands out in your platform, your resume, you're pro-life. And I think you mentioned in the interview with, I think it was with News 12, that's one of the motivations for you to hop in the race. Tell us a little bit about how that fit into your desire to run for Congress.
I was kind of paying attention to what was going on in the state, but then when I heard that Nina Lowy stood in front of the Empire State Building as they put the lights on pink when the Women's Reproductive Health Act was passed, and I realized it was, you could have an abortion on demand at any time, even up to your due date. I literally got sick to my stomach. I thought that was a horrible thing. I have a lot of friends that who couldn't have children, would have taken those children that people didn't want, and they just threw them out. I don't understand it. It's a life. I can't imagine doing that.
Yeah, your opponent, of course, he wants to go ahead and legislate Roe versus Wade. He wants to make sure it's codified. When you go to Congress, you're pro-life. Given that you're pro-life, what do you plan on doing in Congress? What can Congress do? I mean, it's a pretty well-established precedent.
I would like to make the unborn a protected federal class.
All the way from the beginning to
from conception.
amendment?
Actually, yes, absolutely.
Now, have you looked at this district that you're running for? Because it's not a pro-life district, it's more of a pro-choice district. And running for the people, that kind of comes in, I guess, in a different direction of what they were looking for.
I have my personal feelings on this, but I also have to go along with the district wants, and they are pro-choice. It's a tough one. It really is. I would, if that's what the people of District 17 want, that's what I will follow through. But it has to go through all the courts to get back to the Supreme Court. It's going to take decades to do that.
Yeah, and it's pretty well established precedent. What we've seen lately Justice Roberts has gone against, quite frankly, expectations, and he's followed precedent regardless of what it is. So, it's a tough road. But in order to legislate it to be a protected class, assume you pass that. Assuming the House is conservative and Republican passes it, and it goes through the Senate, and the president signs it, it's going to get locked up in litigation for years. So,
It will.
you know.
But there's a lot of people who feel the same way I do. Where does it end? If it ends the day before your due date or the day of your due date, you don't want this baby and you can abort it. When does it end then? The baby's a month old and it's colicky? And you can decide, oh, I don't want the baby anymore. And instead of giving it to somebody who wants it, you just decide, okay, I'm not going to take care of it. Where does it end?
It's moral stand is really what it amounts to. This has been a fight for years. It's been a fight since 1972.
Yes.
And it's going to continue to be a fight for sure. You know, a lot of what's going on, the hottest item before COVID came about, or one of the hottest items, was immigration. The president, of course, one of his premier campaign issues was strengthening and building the border wall. Where do you stand in terms of immigration reform? What you could do as a congressman, what the Congress should be doing?
We definitely need immigration reform, but we also have to protect our borders.
Mm-hmm.
Keep out illicit drugs. Keep out people who are nefarious and want to hurt us. And the issue I have is that Reagan did this in 1982. I'm sorry, 1984. Anybody who came in before January of 1982 was basically granted citizenship. And that was supposed to stop it, but it didn't. Since then, we have 20 million illegal immigrants in this country. Where does it end? We just keep letting everybody in and not throw them out for entering this country illegally?
Well, let me ask you this, Mr. Jones, he's in favor of codifying DACA, and he's also in favor of a pathway to citizenship. How does your view of immigration? I mean, I get it. Ronald Reagan granted amnesty, but what do we do now with the 12, anywhere from 12 to 20 million, I guess, are the estimates? What do we do?
If somehow we could prevent people from coming in this country illegally, I would have no problem with DACA. I have no problem with the people that are here and having them become citizens. As long as they follow the law, then I don't have an issue with it. But the problem is they keep coming.
Yeah. So really the issue is
coming.
Border security. The border for you
yes,
is border
very
security.
important for security. And not only for illegal immigrants, for illegal drugs too.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest problems. They have these tunnels and everything else. In terms of the border wall, then, would you be in favor of funding the border wall even to the greater extent than what the president's done?
I would definitely be, yes, I want the border wall.
I guess it's going along pretty well. They got a couple 100 feet of it, or a couple 100 miles of it. Yeah, Lewis, I'm sorry.
Now, when you talk about immigration and the border, because a lot of immigration comes from overseas as well, what's your plan on that?
There's got to be a way to track people when they come into this country. Listen, I go to St. Martin every year. They take my fingerprint. We don't do that. We don't take fingerprints when people come in. They got to be able to follow them. You come in here on a student visa and your student visa expires, there's got to be a way to track you.
I just want to...
That's really the 20 million we have. And a lot of it is just overstayed visas.
Yeah, and I just want to add, Maureen, because I know, and I don't want people to take the wrong idea that it's not against South American countries, that it's just about immigration altogether. And that's what I want to do.
People come through the Canadian border too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. What about healthcare reform? The efforts have been underway for the past couple of years to really eliminate or reduce the Affordable Care Act. I think in your platform, you're in favor of much more competition, non-mandated healthcare. Please explain a little bit about what your plan would be in Congress for healthcare.
The problem with Medicare for all is Medicare is the hospital sex portion of it is going to run out of money soon. And that's just with the baby boomers and the ones older than that are receiving benefits. Now, if you put everybody into the mix, taxes have to go up, premiums have to go up. There's no way to pay for all of this.
Yeah. Well, what about getting, I mean, there's just some people, older people, younger people, they just can't afford it. We have members of our city council want health insurance. They can't afford it. So what do you do with the people who are uninsured?
The more competition going across state lines, the cheaper the prices will get on it.
Yeah.
You need competition.
Yeah, that's one of the problems. As a small business owner, I will tell you, under ACA, I got out of my firm's health plan because there was only one carrier that did it for my size firm, and that's not competition at all. And the deductible and the price just went up. So what I wound up doing, I went on Medicare. So because that's what people can afford. But across state lines, are you a little concerned that certainly here in New York, we have a lot of regulation of insurers, and it's pretty stringent. Some of these states, not so much. By going across state lines, would you make it an overall like federal regulation of insurers? Take that away from the states?
No, I don't believe in the federal government coming in and taking over anything. I think the states are better regulating their own stuff.
Okay. But if it goes across state lines, how would that work? Wouldn't you have to have some kind of federal structure in order to
No, I
regulate?
think the states, the tri-state area can all talk to each other and they can make decisions together. They make all these little state groups all the time.
Oh, so really
And I think they can
regional
do it better.
compacts.
Excuse me?
So really like regional compacts, because certainly New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut is much different than California, Oregon, and Washington, I guess.
Absolutely.
But in order to set that up, wouldn't that have to be still involve the federal government, or?
No, I don't think so. I think the states can talk amongst each other and try to figure this whole thing out. I don't think the federal government should be involved in this at all.
Yeah. And naturally, I guess your opponents in favor of Medicare for all, and of course your biggest problem with that is how do you pay for it? And nobody's really, I don't think it's come up with a solution to that. Well, what about premiums? What about if you have Medicare for all and everybody pays, a portion of the premium, or reduce premium, or get a subsidy? Wouldn't that work?
No, because the premiums are never going to be good enough to pay for everything. And the part A, whichever the hospital is, will run out of money in 2026 the way it's going. And that's just with the baby boomers. Wait till the next group come in and need all this stuff too that we're getting now.
Yeah.
And Bob,
definitely has to be.
Part
Yeah,
one
I'm
is
sorry.
the hospital.
Bob, as a
That's
business
funded by
owner,
the Medicare tax.
as a business owner with quite a bit of employees, the cost is significant. It stops me from hiring new people, giving higher salaries, giving better benefits. The premium increase every year is between sometimes 10, 15%. And you get to a point, you're like, what else can I do to lower costs? And, you're paying more, but you're not getting better service.
Oh,
Your
no question about it.
deductibles are high.
That's what happened to my firm. I still carry it, but I myself got out of it because that I saved that money by going on to Medicare. But I still have employees that I have to pay for, like you, and it's a higher deductible and higher premium. And
We don't get anything. You gotta beg for approval for MRI. You gotta, do certain things that you're like, why do I have to do this when I'm paying almost $25,000 a year for an employee? And they still, for them, they still can't get approvals for the little things.
Yeah, and they got to pay deductible.
That's one of the problems, I think, when Obamacare came in. The premium rates weren't too bad, and you got approved for a lot of things. But now, when they passed the Obamacare, the rates went almost probably tripled or even more than that. It went from $500 a month for a family to almost $3,000 a month. And like you guys are saying, they decline you on a lot of things that you need or you want to get done. So, healthcare is really.
I think the issue right now for you, Maureen, is somebody's got to do something. And whatever they're doing, whether it's Medicare for all or competition, they're all locked into this Medicare for all. And, as you said, that's just going to be impossible to pay for.
And it affects the middle class more than anybody else. So the diminishing of the middle class is attributed to these type of costs going up because, they have to pay those rates. They don't get any subsidies to make it easier for them. So they're the ones who get hit the hardest.
I agree with that.
So, moving on a little bit, and I'm actually going through your website. That's where I'm kind of getting the bullet points here. One of the things that I noticed in terms of your platform, in terms of foreign affairs, I went to your opponent's platform, and he's got a manifesto of about 40 pages of a lot of detail. But one of the things, and okay, that's his position, but wow, I mean, good luck. But in terms of foreign affairs, one of the things that's been, it was really the president's signature issue, is he pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. Your opponent says, oh, no, we got to get back in there because, our national security is jeopardized. What's your view on the president's current foreign policy, the Iran nuclear deal, the withdrawal from the Middle East? What will you do, or what will you advocate once you're in Congress in terms of either approval of the president's foreign affairs, or do you have some different view on how things should be running?
I'm glad we pulled out of the Iranian nuclear deal. One of our most positive things we should do is keep protecting Israel as much as we can. It's the only democracy in that area. It's us paying when we had President Obama, us paying all that money to Iran, basically not to attack us. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. And it didn't do anything. It didn't do anything, but we paid off someone for a few minutes, and then they threatened us anyway. They were still attacking our ships and everything else that was going on.
Yeah. Sure. But wasn't that money actually theirs to begin with? Isn't it money we
that was supposedly money from 1977 or something like that. I don't know. But you know what it was. We all know what it was used for. We used to give to Hezbollah to attack Israel.
Yeah. Well, that's ultimately what they used. But I think in terms of keeping the money and not giving the money, the issue was we had, as I recall, an international arbitration requiring us to give it back because they bought a bunch of F-14s from us and we never delivered them, and we kept the money. So, but again, whether that's a valid deal to get into, I think is certainly up for debate, and certainly it has to be improved upon, at least what the original deal was, because they still develop nuclear weapons, and we're still interested in the Middle East. There's no question about it. One of the things that, and it's really come to pass with this COVID-19, the federal government has had to just get the printing press going and printing money. There's dueling proposals right now this very week. We're filming on July 20th concerning what to do in the next round of stimulus. I think there's an issue of cutting back on the federal unemployment. That's the Senate wants to do that, whereas the House is in favor of, opening up the printing presses and giving aid to the states. What's your view on trying to help the states dig out from under the COVID-19? I mean, they've lost a lot of sales tax, a lot of revenue. There's going to be a lot of budget gaps. Certainly right here in Peekskill, we're looking at a $3.6 million budget gap. The House has proposed significant amounts of money to municipalities and states. What would you do if you were sitting in Congress right now, and what will you do after the first of the year, because this mess isn't going to be over?
That's a tough one. I really don't know. I'll be honest with you. I really don't know. Another stimulus package is just gonna create more taxes for the rest of us, for all of us. And I don't know if it's doing any good. The way the stimulus package is now, the extra $600 a week, it's encouraging people not to go back to work. They're making more money on unemployment they did in their regular jobs. And there's no encouragement to go back to work.
Yeah, but getting back to the municipalities, regardless of let's say the unemployment, they've lost a lot of revenue. Sales tax is gone. State aid, usually municipalities like here in Peekskill, and we're going to be live streaming into Peekskill and Yorktown, all these municipalities, they're short of money. The state, it's dried up. So what do you do? What's the federal government do, and what do you do to the state? One way or the other, and let's put aside the unemployment, one way or the other, we got to bridge these budget gaps, and how do we do it? And what, if anything, can the federal government do?
Well, just on that note, Bob, do you think we're going to be able to bridge the budget deficit? I mean, we're just expanding it. So that's a tough question, you know, on a fiscal basis. Like, how are we going to dig out of this going into it right now by what's going on? We don't even know where the COVID is going. We may have an upsurge. We may be out of work next week. I mean, it's a tough question.
That's right. And we got someone running for Congress, so that's the debate. Really is. And actually, that's the debate this week. That's the debate going on this week. So, you know, it is a tough one, particularly like in Peekskill. Like I said, we got a $3.6 million budget gap, and that's got to be fixed somewhere. And the state doesn't have the money, and the federal government is the only one that has the printing press to make the money, and it's certainly going to blow up the deficit. But what do you do? I mean, the only relief for taxpayers in a municipality is increase the property tax, and that's a tough nut to go. What about restoring the state and local tax deduction? I know that was trimmed quite a bit by the
Trump
administration. What's your view on that? You're a New Yorker. You're going to be a New York Congresswoman, and
I pay taxes too.
Yeah, and the party orthodoxy is that's a good thing because blue states, you know, that's their problem. What's your view on restoring the SALT deduction?
I'd like to bring get rid of the cap on the SALT tax deduction, but at the same time, which is it's tough in this pandemic to actually say that, you know, Governor Cuomo prides himself on how much taxes we pay. He thinks it's the greatest thing in the world that we're so overtaxed. And I would normally say he needs to, you know, work on his budget a little better. But at this time, it's a hard thing to say because there is no money coming into the state.
Yeah. So it's one of those conundrums that, you know, you go to Congress, guess what? It's going to land on your plate. And, you know, what do we do? You know, your opponent has an interesting proposal, and I looked at his. He's in favor of the universal income that Mr. Yang was in favor during the presidential debates. $2,000 per adult per month, and $1,000 a month per child. I'll ask the question. I know what the answer is going to be. What's your view on that?
It's just going to overtax everyone else. That's what it's going to do. We have pay enough taxes, especially New York State, the highest tax, 2 counties, Rockland and Westchester, in the whole country. And we're already overtaxed, and we don't need any additional taxes. I don't know what they think that's going to do, giving that much money to people. The cost of everything is just going to go through the roof. It makes no sense to me, and it's going to cost $539 billion a year, which we'd have to pay for that a tax increase of 74%. Do we really want that?
Yeah, well, that's what he's looking for. And guess what? A lot of the folks that hear that are not the ones that have to pay that tax. Certainly, you know, property
eventually,
tax.
Listen, eventually you'll pay the taxes because we're going to run out of people paying those taxes because everyone's going to leave.
Yeah, well,
corporations are going to leave, go to foreign countries. People are going to leave, and all the rich people that they think are going to be paying this are going to abandon this country and go to another one. The business is going to do the same thing. And we're going to go through the same cycle we went through 8 years ago.
For sure. Yeah, so I thought that kind of interesting that he's picked up on that, and that's kind of the orthodoxy. I'm not sure how that works, where the money comes from, but it sounds like a good thing. So obviously you're definitely against that. Any other ideas on reining in spending with federal government? I mean, that's one of the things in your platform is to rein in spending, cutting the defense budget.
I can't wait to get into the budgets and go through them. There's got to be duplication of services throughout it. And I want to, let's bring it all together. Let's make 2 different groups one, get rid of some of the people that work. Unfortunately, what happens with some of these things that happen in government programs, they never disappear. They stay forever. And they have duplication of services. I want to get in there. And by the time the services get to the people who need them, there's nothing left because you paid a couple hundred employees to make the program work. I'm going to be hated.
One of the things I think that is on the table, certainly from the other side of the Democratic platform, a lot of money into education. You're in favor of charter schools, as I understand, correct?
School choice.
And choice, education choice. And I know your opponent, his platform is into the free tuition for state colleges and all that. What's your view? Let's put aside the charter and elementary school issues. What about higher education? Free tuition for state schools, free tuition for community colleges. Is that something that you'd be in favor of?
As my father used to say, nothing in life is free. We all pay for it one way or another, and we will. Taxes are going to go up. It's not going to work. Everyone else, I paid for my daughter to go through 4 years of college. I don't need to pay for someone else's kid.
Right. But you also went to a state university, right? In your day,
Yeah.
that probably was reasonable, and certainly your tuition didn't cover the full cost. And certainly in my day,
I paid for the first 2 years. My parents paid for the second 2,
yeah,
which is pretty good considering 6 kids.
that's for sure. Oh my! Another thing I like to ask is, your view on the Second Amendment, right to bear arms.
Yes, everyone has the right to bear arms. As long as you pass the background check by the state, you can have a gun.
What about assault weapons and the ban on assault weapons?
I don't agree with that.
So Mr. Jones wants to buy back all assault weapons. That's something you wouldn't be in favor.
No.
Yeah. Of course, where to get the money from, I guess is the question, right?
Another question.
Yeah,
A lot of
but
money.
beyond that, it's
He's spending a lot of money. He sure is.
Yeah, well, and just in closing, because I think we're pretty much running to the end of our segment, but just in closing, are there any scheduled debates between you and Mr. Jones? I guess it's all going to have to be by Zoom. We can't have any debate.
I actually don't think that any of the papers, News 12 did an article on me, but I don't think they even think I exist. They just refer to me as the opponent.
Okay. Well, you need to get out there. You need to get on shows like Up and About with Peekskill. And we have a good viewership, and quite frankly, I think most of our viewership may be very well aligned with your views. Just in closing, what do you got to say about your candidacy? Why should we vote for Maureen McArdle Schulman for Congress? You
should vote for me because I pay a mortgage. I work my butt off. I work 2 jobs. Sometimes between my husband and I, we work 4 jobs just to make ends meet. And I'm just a common sense person. It doesn't make any sense to me to spend all this money on things that don't necessarily work. And it's our money. Don't forget that. The government forgets. When they talk about government spending, it's our money we put into it. And we want the best for our dollar. We work so hard for it. We want the best for it. We don't want it wasted. Yeah. I don't think anybody will disagree with you on that. Guys, any more questions for Maureen and before we hop into Inside City Hall?
Maureen, tell us something that you would like us to help you with.
Oh, of course. Fundraising would be wonderful. You can go to www.maureenforcongress.com and make a donation to my campaign. I'd really appreciate it. This is definitely a grassroots campaign. My office is my kitchen table, and it's a mess with paperwork and all kinds of stuff. And I have a puppy, and there's dust balls all over the place because I don't have time to clean. Yeah. So I need all the help I can get financially. Yeah. Anyone who wants to help with the campaign, please do. Go to my website and volunteer. There's a space there you can fill out the information. And I want to be a congresswoman. I want to bring common sense back. They're making it crazy out in Washington. We have to straighten it out, and we need everybody to do that. Yeah.
Maureen,
well, three of us actually have run for office, so
then you know.
We know.
A lot of work.
Yeah, we know how it works. So, Maureen, one last favor before you go. Before the election, will you come on and see us again?
Absolutely.
Good
Absolutely.
Back. Good deal. Okay, great. Thanks for coming by. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Maureen.
Enjoy your evening.
Take care. Good luck.
Bye.
Thanks.
Night. How do I get out of it?
Before we get into there we go. Okay, now the 4 of us. Our next segment, of course, Inside City Hall. what's going on down in City Hall lately. Let me just throw this first ball out, if I may. Our last show was June 4th. And on June 1, they had a meeting in which they discussed the budget, the audit report, and all that. And since that time, we haven't heard a word about the budget deficit, how they plan on plugging the budget deficit. All we heard was they took out a $6 million credit line to, a TAN to make ends meet. I find that kind of curious because, this is a kind of a significant issue. You would think there'd be more updates, more discussion.
There's no transparency.
Yeah. I mean, here's a question. We got a shortfall. And right now, as we discussed with Maureen, no money comes from the state, and maybe no money from the federal government. They're going to be wrangling about that for years. Joe, if you're the city manager, what do you do when you're looking at a $3.6 million budget deficit?
I would do what Richard did, run for the hills now, because
not an answer.
there's no bright light at the end of the tunnel. If you're looking on basically what's going on, they lost money. I mean, they were in this predicament before COVID came along, even though they're trying to use COVID as an excuse. But you can see that. They really won't feel the true effects of this until September probably, and then they'll start really feeling it. But the problem is, there's nothing coming to help them. And, either they're going to have to make a really bad decision on raising taxes or doing something to try to get out of it. Because that's really a tremendous hole to it. They had to borrow $6 million just really to stay even.
Yeah. And that's just to keep the lights on and pay the cops and do all that stuff.
And I just see it. I don't see good things coming out of it right now, unless, they know something we don't know. But I've been there, so I know basically, they're going down basically where we left off when we first got there, where everything was in shambles financially. They're hiring their friends, they're giving them money. I mean, they're giving certain people raises, and and like everybody says, there's no transparency whatsoever. So everybody, most people that really pay attention know what's kind of going on. And then you have some people that voted for these people that say, hey, there's nothing wrong with City Hall, it's running great. You know what I mean? But you have to be realistic and say, listen, it's a common sense thing. Look what's going on around you. Look at how they're making cuts on staff. They're not, when Brent left, they never hired anybody to replace him. And they used the same guy that works there already to give him a stipend rate. So that way he can, they don't have to pay the whole amount out. So they're saving money that way. But you really, truly have no leadership in the workforce anymore. So, things are done really not in a good manner.
One of the things they did do, in fairness, they did hire a city engineer.
They did. Charter, says that you have to. But, basically, I mean, they could have done that with hiring another guy that, that did both ends. So, I mean, I just see things. I mean, and then, the girl left, she retired from Parks. And now I heard they're going to make that part of the Youth Bureau, which is, absolutely insane. I mean,
oh my God, is that true?
They're going to have the girl, again, she's going to get more money now to run the Parks and Youth Bureau. So, basically they're taking care of their friends and they're putting them in places. And, what's going to happen to Parks? And there's nothing, even though they lost a lot of money, they saved a lot of money too. There was no big storms this winter, right? So they didn't send the trucks out. Overtime wasn't crazy. And then even though we've been shut down, there's nothing going on in Parks. They're not doing pools. They're not doing, they're not paying staff to be there and all that stuff. So, and meanwhile, they got paid for all this. This is all in their budgets. So, even though they had $6 million they had to borrow, but they still had a lot of money left over from all these budgets that they didn't use.
Yeah. One of the things, and this is going to be a segue into what we're going to talk about in a few minutes, the police department came in under budget last year. They saved $500,000 on the police department budget. And how did they do that? According to the auditor, like guys quit. And, so they hired more junior officers. And so they were able to save at least this year. But I don't know much about police contracts. Maybe you can hop in, Bruce, but these guys all get step increases. Every 2 or 3 years you get step increases in grade, correct? If you're a patrolman or a sergeant or whatever you are.
Well, what they did actually was they reduced their staffing, paid more in overtime, but less in salaries. So that's a common practice amongst police departments in order to save money in their budget. What they're doing is they're just putting the monies to take monies from another source. But overall, the salaries are less. The overtime budget is higher because instead of paying it two guys, they're paying one guy time and a half.
And I think also they went on a 4-day schedule. So instead of doing 5 days or whatever, I think that's where they save money.
And I can guarantee that there's no equipment being purchased.
Nope.
So whatever equipment they have there is pretty well grown old. Don't know what the what the weapons look like, how they're practicing, if they can at all, because they're cutting from every which corner in their budget.
Yeah.
Now, is it every 6 months you have to qualify, or is it every 3 months?
It's twice a year.
Twice a year, 6 months.
So the guy go to the range, there's an expense to that, right? I mean, and the training and all that kind of stuff. Who does that? The county? They go to the county and runs it, or?
Usually Camp Smith, I believe, right? Don't they?
They go to the Camp Smith, they go to the county range down in Valhalla. But in any event, they have to go. And who knows if they're promoting also. So you may have a deficit at the top. Now I know one of the councilmen says that you don't have enough diversity at the top, but who knows if they're even replacing those senior officers with any other officers to take their position, because of course that's an extra cost factor.
And Bruce, let me ask you this. This is where it gets complicated because there's people that have been there and have taken a test as far as years and everything like that. They qualify only for certain jobs, so it's not really about just picking anybody. You have to pick certain people that had passed the test and are waiting, or in pretty much in that realm of you have to meet certain qualifications to get that job, right? Like a lieutenant job or a sergeant.
Right. Yeah, they take promotional examinations, but the department is not compelled to have to promote.
That's right.
Unless they have what is called the minimum staffing, in which each position has to be staffed by a certain number of people. So I don't know when you have a lieutenant retiring if they're promoting a sergeant and then promoting a patrolman to a sergeant and then hiring. And that may be where our shortfall becomes evident, that we will end up with not enough people on the department to do the job.
And it's going to cost us more. You know, and along those lines, getting into, there's this movement afoot. I mean, in New York City, $1 billion out of the police budget. And there's this move to defund the police department. And I know there's been some discussion about that here, even in Peekskill. And, I looked at the police budget, and Bruce and Joe, you just alluded to it, where, they all talk about, well, defund doesn't mean we're going to take money away from them. We're just going to divert money elsewhere. This double speak that comes out, these kids today, I smith words for a living, and I don't understand what they're talking about. When you take money from somewhere, that means you don't have money. So in New York City, $1 billion is $1 billion, and that means, what do you do with it? That's a lot of, they don't put coffee in the coffee room or no donuts. I mean, I don't know. That's $1 billion is a lot of money. But getting back to Peekskill, we have one of the council members who, I don't want to name her by name. I just refer to her as the young pioneer. She wants to disarm the police. It started out with she opposes and she shamed all her colleagues for voting for this armored vehicle that the chief was going to get surplus from the military. And so a questioner on Facebook asked her whether or not demilitarizing the police means you take away all those military weapons they carry, those sidearms. Those are all developed for the military and will transition to police use, the Berettas, the Glocks, whatever. And the answer on Facebook, surprisingly, was the councilwoman is in favor of disarming the police.
Obviously, Sagadello would be in favor of disarming.
Oh, we didn't want to name names. We just call her the young pioneer.
You know what? Let's call it the way it is.
Okay.
We're talking about the MRAP that she doesn't want to get. We, the people, have paid for that MRAP. So the cost of that MRAP to come to Peekskill is about $3,000, and that's just because of transportation factor. But what that vehicle is worth to the city of Peekskill, people don't realize, especially under situations in which you have hostages, which could happen in Peekskill very easily, which you have to move a large number or a good number of personnel from one place to another in a safety situation. The vehicle comes in handy. Now, of course, she says, well, we don't want to look like a military state. Well, guess what? The entirety of the United States is a military state as far as their police departments are concerned. This is what we need in this day and age. So if we're going up against a guy who's carrying a M15 and you're standing there with your 9mm, you pretty much better go home because the work is going to happen. And she goes on the premise that this could never happen in Peekskill. Well, it happens.
Well, and a school shooting or, nearby, whatever it may be. I mean, I could see if the chief came and said, I need $250,000 to buy this thing.
Yeah.
It's $2,000. Look, paint it white, put some flowers on it, put a cover on it. And you know what? If you need it, you need it. If you don't need it, you don't need it. Let's be done with it. But disarming the police is a little. And one of the interesting things, we're filming right now. There's a common council meeting going on right now, so we don't know what's going on there tonight. We'll talk about that maybe our next show. But one of the things that astounded me a little bit was they're going to get together this task force, talk about reforming the police, without any real concept of what has to be reformed. One of the things in the that Council Member Agadello suggested, and she shrieked with glee, is that the police PBA, they want them to be a part of this task force, which I think makes perfect sense. They're the professionals. And certainly they're, if they think there's certainly the rank and file, if there's room for improvement, they're going to tell you. But she shrieked with glee when she found out that their contract expired at the end of 2019. And she said, quote, let's put that at the top of our list. Talk about the police contract. So I found that very troubling because let's talk about police reform, but let's not throw in how these guys put meals on the table and pay their mortgage and hold that hostage to some agenda that people think is necessary at time. Can the police improve? Sure. Let's get the chief in there. Let's get people on this task force from all walks of life in the city. Maybe some retired law enforcement officers. Maybe some people who've had some law enforcement experience. Some people from the community. You need a pretty broad range. But what I'm concerned about is the agenda that I heard, and I think you alluded to this, Bruce. One of the council members is talking about, well, we need more diversity in the superior officer ranks. And I think properly the city manager cautioned that, you have civil service laws, you have lots of issues about filling these ranks. You just can't abracadabra because you think the department should look a different way that it automatically has to happen.
You raise an interesting question about that. And police departments pick their hierarchy brass in a 1 in 3 formula. So you will have 3 candidates and you can pick one of those 3. So if you have 3 minority candidates, fine. If you have 2 minority candidates, fine. If you have 1, they pick it by who qualifies the best. So it's not like, well, we're just going to pick this one from this rank because we like him better, so we're going to bring him up. So in each candidate gets a 1 in 3 pick. Going to be 3 candidates, one of them will get picked based on the civil service list of that test.
Yeah. And by the way, we've been this route before in other civil service, like I think Maureen will tell you, they found bias in the testing or the examinations. And so you fix that so that at least it's not slanted, so that you have a fair cross-section of people that take the exam that qualify. But that's another issue. That's above and beyond, I think, certainly what some task force in the city is going to be able to do.
Well, having been a ranking officer, I know that once you pass from patrol officer to sergeant and go up in the ranks, the civil service testing is pretty standard. And the people who get past patrolmen into the upper ranks basically have a good knowledge of how the police department works and what these questions are all about. So it's pretty competitive. It doesn't lean one way to the other because guess what? We're all doing the same job. And if you're able to get past the first level, the next levels just are competitive tests.
you know, one of the things in addition, I mean, the last cow meeting before they had about a week ago was pretty instructive. One of the other things that warranted quite a bit of attention was the affordable housing, workforce housing debate. If you've been watching that property on Central Avenue, 657 Central Avenue, which I think they're passing a resolution to sell to the developer, they had that guy going pillar to post. He came in with market rate. No, we don't want market rate. Okay. He has to go and refigure his financing and his investors. He comes up and says, well, I got it now. It's 70% workforce and affordable and 30%. Oh, no, that's not enough. And he's going back and forth. This guy, by the way, this contractor, I know he had his first job in Peekskill by painting our buildings in the woods back in 1992. And that's how he started out as a young guy. But if I was this guy, I'd have said, you know, I don't need this. And one of the things that really came out in all the discussion is, what's the plan? What's the city want to do here? We have market rate. We got the Alma project going in. This guy now is 90-10 market rate to 10% affordable. And, you know, the deciding figure was Dwight Douglas in one of the meetings where he said, wait a minute, we got workforce going on right across the street on Main Street next to the Bowman Towers. We have all the Lofts project on Main Street are all affordable. And we've got affordable housing and subsidized housing throughout the city. So, you know, this debate goes on, and it just seems, particularly with this one project that came to light where the developer, he wants to make money. He wants to come down. There's two pieces of garbage property that have been vacant for 50 years, and he's going to buy it at their appraisal. I'll pay that money. I want that. Oh, no. And they got him going. And it just seemed to me there's no rhyme or reason. You know, I mean, what do you do? I mean, you've been through those debates a little bit. I mean, Joe, you were on the council.
Yeah,
the Alma project was approved.
That was, you know, it was always a big debate with you know, the Democrats that were there at the time. You know, they were always talking about affordable housing. And the problem that you have is that Peekskill has more affordable housing, I think, than any other city or town, you know, for its size, you know, going numbers wise, for the longest time. And, you know, and that's what brought developers here, is that when we got in with Frank, no, we wanted people to come here and build stuff. And they didn't want to come here because, you know, developers want to make money. They're not really here to do anybody favors. And, you know, it's all about business, how to make money and build stuff. And, you know, if you tell them that they're going to have, you know, 75% affordable housing, you know, they're not going to make any money on that. And, you know, I mean, I remember that some guy wanted to buy that property. He was going to build a big building there on the other side, I think. And the city didn't want to sell him the property, you know. That's been sitting there for years. And now this guy's going to pay full price. I mean, it's not worth anything, to be honest. I want to give him $2,000 for it.
But it's worth something to him.
Market rate or something like that. So
Yes, I think that a developer is not going to come in, want to build if he doesn't know he's going to make money on it.
that's right. Yeah.
I mean, if we're asking for 10% to be affordable housing, we're saying 90% can be market rate. So we're not asking, you know, when I say we, I mean, you know, affordable housing, people looking for affordable housing. We're not asking for a lot, 10%. Do I believe that AMI in Westchester is too high for Peekskill? Absolutely. Cities like Peekskill, you're talking about Yonkers, Mount Vernon, they should have a separate AMI because it doesn't really go with the residents here. Are we going to push them out? We shouldn't. They were here. They helped create this city. And now developers want to come in and bring, you know, everybody else and not give anyone something, you know, that they can afford. So we're not asking a lot by saying, give me 10% and give me an AMI that works with Peekskill. Developers are going to make a lot of money. When they come in there and cry broke, that's their job. Their job to say is, oh, I'm not going to make any money. I'm going to lose. That's par for the course. But I think it's right that we fight for those residents that are here, those who are living with their mom and dad and make $40,000 a year and say, you know, I want to move out. I love a one-bedroom apartment that I can afford and, you know, start from there. We all started from somewhere. You know, I paid rent $500.
But the issue is the mix. I think that's the problem. We haven't decided what that mix is.
If
because if you have too much affordable housing, that's going to impact on your tax.
Eventually, we're going to even out.
Yeah.
Well, no,
It's going to even out. And with all this new building that's going on, it's going to start evening out. And you know what? That's who our residents are. I know we want people with disposable income, if we give them a rent they can afford, they're going to have disposable income.
Yeah.
Well, the
I mean,
problem,
that's just my part in affordable housing and stuff like that. I deal with a lot of it in the city, and I think there's a compromise there. I think the MRI issue is something that has to be looked at. I think 10% we're not asking for a lot. So, you want to come in here, make money from this city and everything that it offers, you got to bring something with it.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things, they had a last meeting, they had a guy from the Westchester County Planning Commission he was doing a presentation on a affordable housing legislation that the city, some cities have instituted. Now, a lot of them, it's because of that housing settlement that went on a number of years ago. Outfits like Scarsdale and all that, they didn't have any affordable nothing. This guy, though, made an interesting observation. He got his throat jumped down by the young pioneer. And it's because he said Peekskill's way ahead of the game. We have more affordable housing going right now in all these projects. So he was very sympathetic to the idea of, there's a balance to be made here. But out of all of this, the budget, out of all of this, the police reform, out of all of this housing, here's something that's missing. Every year, under the city charter, the mayor is required to provide a report to the common council on the state of the city's finances, on the state of the city's affairs, and it's supposed to be in January or such other time as the mayor may deem appropriate, or other times actually. We're hitting July or August. I don't remember seeing a state of the city address by the mayor with a vision. Here's where we're going on law enforcement reform. Here's our problem with our budget, and here's how we're going to fix it. Here's where we're going with housing. We got all these people coming in.
they want,
And it gets back to something we started the show with over 2 years ago, 2 years and 4 months, with a little hiatus when somebody left us. And that's transparency. Do you know what's going on? Or do you really know what's going to happen with the budget? We can all sit here with a blue in the face. But somebody's got to figure this out. That budget has got to be on the city manager's desk September 1, got to be on the council's desk October 1. And there better be some answers. And guess what? The ferry from Albany ain't going to come down and sprinkle money on this stuff. Law enforcement, there's a problem. There's people, uneasy, uncomfortable. What's the city's vision? What do we see for our police department?
Bob, you raise a really good point here. And I think there's a problem. And the problem that I think it is that, and I do respect the mayor of the city. I think he's been trying to do a really great job. But I think he's lost his vision to other council members who are now trying to take over that position.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the causes of this transparency that we're not seeing from the mayor's office and the council, because there is no direct leadership there. And that's the problem, because you're absolutely right. We should have had a state of the city address by now. We're almost 3/4 of the way through this year, and we don't know what's going on.
well, one of the biggest things I was surprised at myself was
And what the plan is going forward. That's the issue. So
the biggest thing.
well, maybe if the mayor sees our show, he'll get back huddle with his political advisors and come up with a state of the city. It's really needed. I mean, it's what Peekskill wants. It's what Peekskill needs. And, that's just our 2 cents, I think, for the night. Well, this has been a great discussion, I think. And
Bob,
unfortunately,
just to add, what people want is information. Whether it's good or bad, I think we're all grown people, and we understand what's going on, and we just want a sense of direction as to, what's going to happen next couple of months. What can we do as residents to help out and stuff like that? So, we want to be a part of how we get out of this. But let's talk, let's have a conversation, put it out there in front of us. We understand what we have to do, and we can do this together. That's what the city is supposed to do together, Yeah. But, we're hoping it'll come out soon. And if it doesn't, we just, we'll be in the dark for a little while longer.
One thing I want to add also, with Lewis is that, sitting through this for the last couple of months, I think some of us even talked about it, is that we haven't really seen anybody from the administration really come out. I think Andre says a couple of things here and there, talks a little bit about it, but what's going on with the city as far as COVID? What are they doing? What kind of reports are we getting? Someone to lead the city and say, this is what we need to do. This is what residents should do. And also talk about, with the $6 million that they're borrowing and are we in trouble or should we be worried or, calm people down because, the people that pay taxes or, the ones saying, well, what's going to happen now? I mean, there's certain people that, don't pay attention to it, but the ones that are paying attention going, wow, it's a little scary right now because what's going to happen? You're going to give me a 25% increase on my taxes? I mean, what, So, it's one thing, nobody's getting any kind of leadership out of City Hall right now.
Yeah. Even something as simple as DRI, what's going on with that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is you don't know. You don't know finances. You don't know what's going on. You hear things and then it happens. They don't talk to people about it. Don't let people know what's going to happen. And I think that's a big problem for them. But,
Well, maybe if the mayor watches, I'm sure he does. He laughs. I've asked him to come on. I'm sure he does. Maybe he'll get together and do what some elected him to do.
Yeah.
Anyway, as always, we're running a little bit out of time. One of the things, unfortunately, happened over the past few days, the passing of John Lewis, Representative Lewis from Georgia. He's one of those guys that, from that old school, the civil rights movement back in the 60s, he's the guy, if anybody should be bitter at the system, it ought to be him. He was almost killed in marching, by the way, a lawful march. There's a court order allowed that march across the Ibn Street. But he's a guy who stood in there, and instead of tearing down the system, all he's trying to do is make sure the system works for everybody. He's a congressman, passes legislation, argues, and tells everybody to get in good trouble, he calls it. And what's he mean by that? Good trouble means you don't burn, you don't loot, you talk to people, you treat them respectfully, and get your fist up in the air a little bit if you have to. But he's one of the class acts in the Congress. That's who he killed.
Absolutely, he was a fighter. He was a fighter to the end. Didn't take no stuff from no one, and he lived it. He saw it, he lived it, and he fought against it. And that's what we can all inspire to do. But he did it in a certain way that we can give him all the respects for it, and made people think of what his message was, which was a great message. And all the way to the end, he fought against people who try and do things the wrong way. So my hat's off to him. He's going to be missed dearly. And the civil rights leaders that did make a lot of change for this country, and good change too.
Yeah. So round robin, just to take our last 2 minutes, things to look out for, things you're worried about. Louis?
Well, I like to see, as the days are getting hotter and hotter, I like to see the plan for the cooling stations for, our seniors and people who just, get caught out in that heat. We're going to have places for them to go to cool off. I haven't heard anything about that. I also want to say that United Way gave out 100,000 pairs of socks, and the Rotary Club was one of the ones who went out to try and get it so we can hand them out to our residents. So tomorrow, July 21st, during the food distribution, we're also going to be giving out pairs of socks to those that are online and who are in need. And we've worked also with the Housing Authority, and we'll be giving out socks out there to Housing Authority residents. It's out there for the taking, and the Rotary does not stop. Wherever they can get something to give to the population, to our community, that's what we do 24/7. We also want a grant, which is a $50,000 grant, because really of all the work that we're doing, where we're working with the first responders, feeding them, and working with the local restaurants. So we were able to get that grant where we're going to be getting the food from local restaurants so that they can get the business and feeding our first responders as well. That was the grant. We went after it, and the day after we submitted it, we got it. So, people are really starting to see the great work that the Rotary does in the community. So I'm really proud of them and all the things they've been doing. So hats off to them.
Oh,
Yeah, I agree with Louis. One thing I have to appreciate this summer is seeing the Rotary help feed people, and Louis is one of the front runners there. With some of the other people that come down, all the Rotary people that come down to help. And it's pretty good to see. I helped once in a while when I could. And you know, it's nice to see people come up that need stuff, and you're able to give it to them. And I think the Rotary does an unbelievable job of, you know, their community, and hats off to them. And also, you know, I like to see also, like Lewis said about the cooling centers. It's hot now. I just feel that, you know, you don't get that anymore. That you don't, you know, they should be saying, hey, listen, we're opening up the cooling centers for Peekskill residents or people, seniors that can't breathe in this stuff. They're in their home, and you know, it's hot to have no AC. So, you know, we really got to hopefully get active with our neighborhood and start taking care of some of the people that we need to.
Okay, Bruce?
Yeah, I'd really like to give an attaboy to all the residents of Peekskill who have come together in these really hard times, especially the COVID, the protesting. And we have a city that's very well united, in which we don't have to feel that we're in danger of attending events in the city, because the people have come together, and in any type of protest, it's been done in a very peaceful manner. And so my hat is off to all the residents of the city. But of course, my heart is always with the police department, and I feel that the police department needs to have the tools, the money to be able to do the job to keep the people of the city safe. It's a very tough job to do, and when you're playing politics within the police department itself for another meaning, mainly to socialize that police department, this becomes very dangerous to the residents of the city because they need to be protected. And your first line of defense is your police department. So that's my concern.
And
Yeah.
I would like to add one thing with Bruce on the police thing. You know, people don't realize, or some people don't realize, that New York State is releasing a lot of their prisoners on the street, and these are career criminals that are coming out. So crime rate is going through the roof. You know, and that's part of why the crime rate's going up through the roof in New York City and everything else. But you know, now is when you need your police more than ever, and their hands are even tied when they have to make a play, because they have that bail where they catch it, and you know, there's no bail on you, so they release it almost within hours.
I'd just like to close with a little memory. 51 years ago today, Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon. And I'd just like to say, you know what? The Americans got together and did that because the President Kennedy, said that's what he wanted done by the end of the decade. And we did it. And with all the mess we've been going through, and remember at that time, 51 years ago, there was unrest in the streets. There was a war going on. We had much of the same problems. But we got through it. We did it. And it just is sort of that spirit that with the pandemic and all of what we're going on and what we're dealing with, Americans can get together and we can do it. And I've never lost hope for that. And 51 years ago, while I was watching Neil Armstrong, I was eating birthday cake with my dad. It was his birthday. And that's how we watched Neil Armstrong. And he was a patriot, my dad, World War II vet, and he was pleased as punch to see that guy hopping on the moon. So anyway, I'd like to close with that. Up and about with Peekskill United. Stay tuned. If you have any comments, please let us know on Facebook or on YouTube. And thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it.
Good night.
Good night.